Hello, friends. Welcome to Inside the Founder Studio. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're interviewing Nicole Glenn. So it is Nicole Glenn and the Candor Expedite story. Welcome,
Hi,
Nicole.
Joe. Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is great. Now, I know I interviewed you once on the logistics of logistics. We talked about relationships,
Mhm.
and I know you're very good at that, but I know you're also very good at Candor Expedite. So please introduce yourself and your company.
Hi, everybody. Again, Nicole Glenn. I'm the owner of Candor Expedite. It is a company that was started in 2017 with the mindset of expedite and white glove service. So we have two locations currently. Headquarters has now actually just moved down to Plano, Texas, but we have a location in Joliet, Illinois, and have some other up our sleeve tricks on some other locations that we're going to be opening in the next year or two. So we are a service company that's focused on, like Joe said, relationships, understanding what we can do to elevate our customers and give them this special tool belt that they could just pull out or hit a button, and we're there to help rescue a shipment, help them save time, understand their account to create that familiarity
Right.
so they can move on with their day and really just elevate our clients to the next level.
Yeah. So who do you serve? Who's your kind of your ideal client, your sweet spot?
You know what? It's funny because most industries, even though a lot of people aren't aware of this, do service or have the need for expedited services. So when we started the company, it was a lot of freight forwarding clients that we were working with. A great customer because they are handling all sorts of different commodities, different
Right.
customer requirements,
Right.
inbound, outbound, domestically, export, import. But we're starting to shift over to the manufacturing side of the business in
Oh
all
yeah.
verticals. So, I mean, we do a lot of food type clients, we do healthcare, pharmaceutical, aerospace. So, I mean, I could keep going with
Right.
the verticals of that.
Yeah, since I worked in automotive and when I was at a 3PL, we had a whole bunch of automotive clients and um boy, come launch season, you do some heavy duty expediting. And I remember one night I said, it was right when I got there. I said, "Please have all the after hour phone calls come to me. I want to understand what's happening at night." And I expected like 1 or 2, and usually that was like the way it was going. So I was like so I'd have a chance to talk to new customers, and then one night, there was 11 expedites from 11 PM to
Yep.
7 AM, and I had to manage them myself. And I started really appreciating how good my team was. And
Well,
it's
that
funny
was us too. When we started, we didn't have that night crew. So I would do what you did.
I had a big meeting at 9 o'clock the next day, and I woke up and I was like I was kind of prepping and I was like, "God, I'm tired." I go, "I don't." And I was like because I was up all night, the phone kept ringing. It was like I was like a zombie. I just pick up the phone and start dealing with this call.
Yeah, we had this new customer. I mean, this is when we first were going and we got this new client. And so they would call almost every night at like 9 o'clock.
Oh,
And
right. Good
I would be
customer.
there booking I would do it myself, that grit part when you own a company, right? And I would be booking that freight and coming home at 1 o'clock in the morning and then felt like I needed to get back in the morning.
Right,
And, I wanted to make sure it was picked up. I wanted to make sure it was good. So that's the starting fun part, when
right,
you're trying to learn all of that stuff and get things in place that you have to deal with, for sure.
right. Yeah, so you've done a lot with freight forwarders, a lot with manufacturing and those so it's not so much necessarily a vertical as much as can I partner with these people, right? It's gotta be the right, right
Yeah, yeah,
folks.
there is
Right thinking guys, my boss used to say. We
yeah,
wanna work with right thinking people, people who align.
there's always something funky that comes up for someone, and they always have a need for a last minute recovery, like an LTL goes wrong or something just happens, and I like to be that person that, they know they can call last minute and go,
When it's on fire, call Nicole
"Right, can you
or
just
her team.
handle this? Right, can you just get this done?" And again, it's making them have the ability to have that balance of life too, because I think as, companies get going forward, there's constantly this dumping of additional roles on people that they
Right,
have to manage. And so it's nice to be able to say, hey, go home, go see
right.
your kids. I got this. You don't have to worry about it. Go to bed at night too.
I think when it comes to expedites, it's a crazy thing because usually that's they're expediting because it's hot, right?
Yeah.
There's this on fire, and then people really struggle to feel comfortable with because I think we've all been burned that way where you're like, yeah, somebody's gonna pick it up, and don't worry, it'll be at your customer by first thing tomorrow morning, and then you get in the morning and realize they did not do what they said they were gonna do. So
Hmm.
you get in that mode of especially with somebody new, like, I better call them every half hour and to make sure that they're doing what they said they're going to do.
Yep. Yep.
You have to soothe the ruffled feathers that are coming with that business.
But I think because I've been doing the expedited side of things for 20 years now, I kind of know that that is how it's going to be.
Yeah,
So I just tell them up front, like, hey, if you want me to text you, my team to text you, um, we can do that. We tailor that so that way they
right,
get that comfortable feeling
right,
right away, because
right,
there's nothing worse than that, like carrying
right.
that all night. Like, all right, I don't know them and I could lose my job if this doesn't get here tomorrow.
Yep.
So,
I have a friend who, is an investment counselor, and he said, "It's about 20% investing, about 80% counselor. You should put a counselor title on your people over there, Nicole." Say say when somebody calls in, "You don't actually need an update, you actually need to talk to our crisis person."
right, you can vent all you want. It's just someone that keeps going, I understand. I understand.
So let's get into this. Oh, but I should also mention, I've known Nicole for a few years, and I met her when we were working on we're still working on updating your website. We will launch the new, website soon through my friends over at Sun Interactive, and, I think I introduced you to Ryan Schreiber? Or
Yes.
and then when
Yeah.
I told Ryan, we're doing this podcast together inside the founder studio, so we're interviewing different founders of these companies, and yesterday or last night, I text, Ryan that I'm interviewing Nicole, and he said, "Oh, great, you're gonna hog all the good ones," or something like that, so Ryan planned on interviewing you, so maybe you'll have to get interviewed twice,
I
Nicole.
would love that because I was actually gonna say with Ryan, we've started conversating and he's become one of those people that very blunt, very
That
understanding.
very nice, but blunt.
Oh, no, but in it's like I hang up and I go, "Okay,"
Yeah.
and I think that's a big
He's
thing.
got great
Yeah,
insights, and
for a business owner to be able to bounce those ideas off of somebody and they tell you the truth with no sugarcoating and it
r
helps.
right. No, he's helped me along the same line, so great guy, and again, he wanted to interview you. So, let's get into this. So, we understand you've got Candor Expedite. When did you start the company?
It was actually the day before my birthday, so May 6th in 2017.
Nice, nice. So, we'll get into your career highlights here in a minute, but first off, let's talk about where you grew up and where you went to school and all that. So, where'd you grow up as a kid?
I grew up in Naperville, Illinois. So
Nice.
there was this humongous high school that was built at like all these news articles were written about it all over the country. It was called Nequa Valley, and I was the first class that got to graduate from this high school. So it's so funny when I meet anyone and they go, "Where are you from?" I say Naperville. They could be from Alaska, and they're like, "Oh, I know Naperville. I got a cousin there."
Yeah, I used to drive through it because I have family over in Wisconsin, and I don't remember stopping in it because I always think when we talked about Naperville, I always think, "Isn't that where the outlet malls are?" But it's not
No,
that.
it's Aurora.
But, yeah, I remember it's somewhere near Chicagoland, and
Yeah,
I always think when you're driving through Chicagoland over to Wisconsin, you're always just saying, "What are the bad exits?" That's all you care about. Like, make sure I don't get a bad exit that's hard to get back on the expressway. So, tell us a little bit about your childhood.
I am one of three children, so I'm the middle child. I have an older brother and I have a younger sister. So we're
Nice.
kind of split now amongst the country. So my brother's still in Illinois My sister's husband works for the railroad, so in transportation as well,
Nice.
and they're in Nebraska. So my parents are retired snowbirds. They're actually staying with us right now. They wanted to escape the
Oh, yeah.
12 inches of snow that they just got, and,
Yeah.
they came down to stay with us where it's nice and warm, Texas.
Yeah, I'm in Michigan, so not too 4.5 hours over to Chicagoland, and I remember when my kids were young, they would always say, "When we grow up, we're gonna move to Chicago. It's such a cool city." I was like, it's just as cold as here.
Yeah,
Like, you can't go there. Look at the Carolinas.
yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in the
Uh
summer, for sure.
I love it there. So, were you always entrepreneurial as a kid? Did you work hard?
Yes, I think back now, I look at some of those traits of myself from when I was 16 and 17, and I was 15 when I got my first job. One of my good friends' mom, she would go to one of this retail stores and we would like reset these stores. And I was making $10 an hour, Joe, at the age of 15. I felt like,
Yeah,
millionaire at the
I'm
time.
gonna quit school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved that idea. I loved getting money. It was great. I mean, my parents, we were good. Nothing was terrible. I had a great upbringing with that, but they had bills to pay. They had normal life to live. They had mortgage and all that stuff. So there wasn't just tons of handouts to us. And when I started making money, I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. So then in high school, I really took off and had two jobs at the same time, to try to make as much money as I could. And my friends used to pull up. I would say I had two guy jobs. I worked in a hardware store and an automotive store, and then I went into the I guess you could say at the time of the year 2000 industry of transportation at the time. But yeah, I always loved to work. It's just been ingrained. And even my dad, when I was 18, 19, I was like, Dad, let's open some subways. I probably scared the crap out of him because I was always like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And he always thought, he's like, look into it. And I did, but I never did anything with any of that stuff.
But you're always kinda driven, and you always enjoyed your work. I think that's something I'm hearing, and, from other people I've interviewed, entrepreneurs, it's interesting 'cause we when we're talking offline about this, as the world becomes wealthier, we always kind of want to give our kids more and
Mhm.
go, "Oh no, you don't have to work, honey. I'll just give you money." And then you realize, as you get a little older, you're like, "Ooh, that's a mistake," because so many successful people like yourself, you really gained so much more than the money. The money's long gone by now. You blew it on cool Abercrombie and Fitch stuff. So
Yes, that's what I spent all my money on, and great Taco Bell.
right, exactly.
Mhm.
God, but the money's long gone, but the lessons are still there. So you went to this high school after school. Did you go run off to college?
I actually got offered my first transportation job, at right away. Like, I was working in that automotive store, and this guy came in and offered me a job. And so he was going to actually pay me quite a bit more. I think it was like $13 an hour, and I'm like, yeah. So I went and worked for him during the day, and then I was in community college at night.
Yeah, I did
So
that route. I did
I
that
did
route.
eventually stop because I started thinking that, wow, I do so well in freight at,
Right,
$50,000 a year. I don't need to do this college thing, but I did go back. Um, After I had my daughter, I realized, that I couldn't make my kids do something that I hadn't done.
right,
So I walked into this school. It was for adults, so I didn't even qualify. My age wasn't I wasn't old enough, but I asked them, I'm like, can I please come here? I have a child, and this is what I want to do. I want to be able to graduate and tell my kids, like, you could do whatever you try to achieve. That's a big thing, even
right,
today, lessons to my kids. But then I also, again, like I said, I didn't want to say, you have to go to college and then them go, well, you didn't.
right,
So, and
right,
I ended up falling in love with school, Joe. As an adult, going to college I miss it now. I want to
right.
go back.
Yeah, I went to school, at night school from age 19. So I went 1 year full time, and I went from age 19 to age 37 at night school.
Yeah.
I had my undergrad and my master's, though. And I kinda wonder, like, though, would I bother now? Knowing what I know now, would I bother? but because my current employer doesn't care. But I'm glad from my kid's perspective, it's easier to say, get your butt to school. So, what about sports? You play sports when you're a kid?
I started to. I was on the softball team, and then it turned to work. So
So you're more driven work wise
stopped
than
I stopped trying out for everything, and I loved soccer. I stopped all of that, and I just started working.
cool. And so you started to allude to that first job. What was what was your first logistics job again? I know you told me this before when
Yeah,
we
I was
talked
supposed to just
before.
be an admin. I worked in this really, really small company. There was 3 men.
And you
So
were recruited out of the hardware store.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
no, the auto parts.
yeah, I was a cashier, and I remembered something weird, and so he's like, "Come on, come work for me." I'm like, "This is weird. Who does that?" But
You were excellent at auto parts. You would be perfect for my logistics company.
there you go. So it was just a entry level, like, "Hey, can you help me answer phones? Can you do some filing? Can you fix this and that?" And then it turned into me telling the owner, like, "Why are we doing this all paper? Let's get an accounting system." So I got us on Peachtree accounting software at the time, and,
Pretty
we would
high tech.
yeah, we would handwrite raycons, like, pretty much on a just a white sheet of paper at the beginning, and I was like, "Let's do this on Excel, and let's do that." And so then I started just changing the very foundational things, the basics, I guess you could say, in that company, and I loved it. And I started brokering and started having relationships with carriers as well as shippers, and it was an awesome starting job for me. I learned
Yeah,
so much.
and it's nice to go to a small company like that where you really get thrown right into the mix,
Oh yeah,
but
I
it's
was called
also
the kid.
you right, the kid. But it's also, kinda tells a little bit about your personality that you were, even as a young person, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna jump in and improve this." Because, a lot of times as a young person, you kind of and I've had this both ways where you feel empowered to go make great things happen. Other times you're like, "I better just keep my big mouth shut."
Yeah,
And, so it's nice that you felt empowered, and maybe you were, maybe you weren't. I sometimes feel like you become empowered because you said so, right? And
yeah. And
the boss was
I mean,
willing to
they were open to it because
good
they
for
were
them.
the ones doing the handwritten invoices, and I'm like, "Hey, I can do
Give
this."
it to the kid.
Yeah, let the kid do it. So eventually it was like I was running this little shop. So, I mean, I was taking all the orders and booking
Good for
all
you.
the loads and making all the appointments. I used to deliver to all the food companies like McLean Food Service when you actually had to pick up the phone and make an appointment. And so it was a really good learning experience. It created that confidence, I guess
So
you could say.
so where'd you go next?
I went to a company that had an owner operator model and a brokerage. Um, I did a lot of the backhaul, like, I had never done that before, so they had owner-operators, and I actually loved working with some of these drivers. Um, I would go and try to make relationships with our actual customers and get them loads back. I started working on the DAT, like, trying to build relationships with brokers, but then I also did the brokerage side of things with our customer freight, and so with that, I, kinda rekindled a relationship that they had had with a pretty big shipper. And the shipper was like, "You're really good to work with." And here I am, like this, I think I was 21. They were like, if you leave, because I guess they didn't like the company, the whatever was happening at the company. They were like, if you leave, we will give you so much business. So here I'm like this 20 or 21-year-old kid, and I'm like, I'm gonna be an agent. So I went and found a company that I could be an agent for. And got this contract signed for this huge company, and I was so excited. I went down to Chicago, went to this famous building to do this, and they just stopped taking my calls. So after I signed the contract, I quit my job. So it was a big awakening moment, but I actually stopped being in freight for a little while after I had my daughter and then went back in and like they always say, I get out and you keep pulling me back in. So I went
So
back into it.
so when did you start Candor Expedite?
I had just left. I shouldn't say just left. I'd worked at a company that I loved for about 8 years, and I decided to transition to a different company and started working there for about 11 months, and then I realized I just wanna work for myself. And so it
Right.
was one of those, get put in a weird spot working at another company, and I'm just like, I think I could do this. I love this idea, and from my previous positions, I fell in love with the concept of managing people and learning more about people and creating that value of a company with their people.
Right.
And so it was just like the
Right.
perfect thing for me to do.
Yeah, and it's funny, I've asked this before about entrepreneurs, and when we were talking about this offline, I asked you, "Did you see an opportunity that you think, 'Oh, I can do this so much better,' or did you just want autonomy?" And I think you said, "I just wanted
Autonomy.
I just wanna do something on my own."
Yeah, it was one of those too where I felt like, and I tell this to people all the time when they ask this question, I'm like, I wanted to feel secure in my position. I didn't want to ever be replaced. I didn't want to, because I don't just go into a company and work there. I pour my soul into it.
Right.
I will do whatever we can. And it just, the concept of doing that and then getting let go or someone replaces you.
I right.
So,
I've lived that. I've lived
yeah,
that where you go, "This is my heart and soul in this business," and it's funny, what I've realized over time is I don't have any other mode. If I
I
work
know.
somewhere, it doesn't matter whether I like it or dislike it, uh, great pay, bad pay, I'm all in, and then after a while, you realize that not everybody feels that way,
No.
and, so you might as well be on your own if you're gonna work that hard.
Yeah, so, I mean, and it was weird because even when I had gone and done this, I would ask myself sometimes, like, when am I ever going to love my company as much as I loved where I just was, that long time company that I had been to? And it was one of those things where it's like you have to fall in love with it, and you do over time if you keep putting yourself into it. But it was just one of those things where it was just time, and
So what year was that?
that was in 2017.
So, what's so talk a little bit about what's happened since then. I know you've moved, you no longer live in
I did.
Illinois.
I did. I always had some great customers down here, even as a sales rep. So I used to keep coming down to this spot and I loved it. And so I had intention, which we just opened a company called Candor Express. So our asset based division was going to be down here without me. And I jokingly said to my husband one day, I was like, let's go down there and open that office and get that asset based side going. And he owned a landscaping company. And so I thought he would go, he didn't. He goes, let's go. So I was like, okay, let's go. And so we just came down here. It's been over a year now. It was 2019, October.
Right, I remember you had just moved down there when we first started talking. So, did your husband and how old are your kids?
I have a 15-year-old daughter, and then I have twin boys who are about to be 12.
Woo! And
Hmm.
so, hubby relocated and said, "I'll start over down here in Texas."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's the weather, it's all of that up there. And it's just a new chance. And we always said, that one day we wanna not know where the grocery store is. I mean, I grew up in Illinois, Naperville, and that's where I'd always been, and so it was just, let's try something new and
Let's move
see.
to the desert. Why not?
Yeah, I probably, and it's funny because once you do something, it's like the same as an entrepreneur, right? Once they open a company, they go, "I wanna open another one, and I wanna," and it's the same thing with even doing something risky to relocate. It almost goes, "That wasn't so bad.
Right.
Maybe
So so
I'll do
ta
something else."
so
Yeah.
talk a little about some of the turning points, some of the inflection points that you've had since you started the biz.
When I started the biz, I had a business partner, and I've come to realize that that is a very challenging thing to do when you have people that you're all in a business with. So I had a huge learning experience with that, and ultimately had to rebuild what.
That doesn't sound positive.
No, no, and what's really terrible about it? It was one of my friends that I had been, I mean, long time relationship with,
Right.
15-year friendship that, we are obviously no longer friends, which is terrible, but it's one of those things, it's a huge, huge learning curve. But when you step back out of it after it's all done and all the emotions and everything is settled, you start looking at it, and it's a very humbling experience, and it's a very you learn a lot about yourself.
Right.
You learn a lot about what you need to do in business and how you need to represent yourself. So
Right.
it
So
motivates you.
so that was a as you said, a setback,
Yeah.
humbling. So how do you in general, how do you feel like you deal with problems like that? Because there are setbacks, there always will be, especially as you start expanding your company across the country. How do you manage those kind of, roadblocks?
Well, I think as a new entrepreneur, you need to understand that you're going to have them all the time. I don't think I had that mindset when I first started. I don't think that I ever thought that it would be year after year something crazy would happen, right? So get through that whole separation, and then we started building our company. We started getting clients, and I was very much so working in the business instead of on the business. So the customer base was it was small. It was very focused on certain companies, and had another setback where the company that my client restructured, and we just watched our revenue go shrinking big time. And so again, these setbacks from having them, and COVID coming, and all of these things that have happened pretty much every year, there's been something that's like,
Right.
that was not planned this year.
Right.
Um,
It's that putting in Chicago or Detroit terms, it's the pothole you didn't see.
yeah, but you start understanding that that's part of it. And so how you respond to them, you prepare a little differently for them. So now you go, okay, I want to make sure that I'm safe with working capital. I want to have this and this and this. So you prepare for that,
Right.
so that way you never have a downturn of staff or anything. But
Right.
I think you just kind of accept the fact that they're going to come. And my whole thing now is trying to remain calm through them, and try to
Right.
figure out a way and create a solution, and not just take it all on by myself too anymore. So now I have people on my team that, I say, this is what's going on. How do you think we should improve this? What can we do to make this
Right.
better? How do we get through this? And they talk, and they love being a part of that.
Right. No, that's great. I think also you kind of you built your own personal resilience, so now you're trying to make your company resilient. And so you mentioned you working on your business instead of in your business. I've heard that term, and I know as a small business owner, I'm supposed to be doing the same. Usually, I'm working in it and not on it.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
It was probably when COVID came that I started realizing, again, with that customer downturn, like I said to you in the beginning, 9 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, working on shipments, sleeping on the couch, doing the accounting, this, that. So I was just very involved in every single function. I would
Right.
see every email that came in. I mean, it was not micromanaged, but if I guess it was on some things, because I just wanted to make sure that we were
Right.
executing the way that I had told clients we would. And so
Right.
this past year from COVID, I started realizing, okay, I got to network with people. I got to understand what other business owners are doing, and how do I really take this to the next level? And so these conversations that I had, I joined Vistage. I don't know if you
Oh
know
yeah.
what
I
Vistage
know.
is.
I know of it. So that's VISAGE, or
VISTA.
okay, Vistage with a T. VISTAGE. So
Yeah.
that's like the owners groups, right? So
Yeah.
all
Yeah. It creates a kind of a board of directors for you, and they call out your BS. You bring a problem to the group, and I mean, it's amazing. They go through every single thing, you get suggestions, they ask you questions, and it's like a great support group. And that was one of the things. I have a business coach through it. And so we have a monthly meeting. And again, it's her constantly keeping me on track on being working on the business instead of in it. And
right.
with this past year of doing that, just changing since COVID, I mean, our company has grown significantly. And the plans and the structure and the strategy, it's like it's happening now. Now it's not just a wish, it's a goal, and it's
Right.
got to happen.
And I know just from the conversations we've had, I know this that you're real focused on having a great team. And I know you talk quite a bit about your team now. And that wasn't when I first met you, that wasn't necessarily the case. I'm sure you had a team, but you talk so much more about, my great team now. And even your marketing people that I worked a little bit with. And That's great. Good for you. That's why you're growing.
Yeah, and that's a big turning point that, owners need to focus on is empowering their team to take you to that next level. You cannot do it by yourself.
So what has been some of the challenges, and what did you learn while you're growing?
Oh, we don't have that long to talk about all this stuff. I mean, it's a constant, a constant of challenges that you come across. Some are small, some are very, I mean, minuscule things too. Like I said, having relationships with current clients and having certain ratios of business and looking at the numbers and understanding what really makes your company tick, and then going basic too. I think sometimes we overcomplicate stuff, right? We have
Right,
all these great ideas. We want to make sure that let's throw out a survey and get all of our customer feedback and make it this huge thing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. It's
right,
if we stay on track as a team and we honor those commitments and we really execute for a customer,
right,
communicate, and we live by those three pillars that we promise, the communication, service, transparency, we won't lose a customer. We'll keep growing. And that's what we're starting to see now is we're getting references. We're getting, us other customers saying, "Hey, work with this company. I've never seen anything like it." And so for me, being the owner of that, it's a humbling experience, but now I'm trying to tell my team and empower them to become the multipliers of that.
right.
And how do
Excellent.
they how do they keep teaching others to really lead the candor way that is the evolving way, but it's still how do we get everyone to kind of expand that mindset and
Right.
take it to the next level?
You mentioned Candor, and I know, I asked you before, but I'll ask you again. I know why you named it Candor, but talk about that.
Well, it does match my personality. If you look at the actual logo, it's the word from the definition. So everyone thinks with that dot that I was trying to do something funny. I wasn't. It was just to show that that's straight from the dictionary. It's the syllables, that separate it.
Yep.
Because I wanted to create a company that was based on being completely honest and forthright and blunt, and um, in good ways, like blunt
Right.
doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. It can be where you're trying to actually not sugarcoat, help a client get an understanding and never
I,
have to lie about anything.
I don't want to be schmoozed when my expedite's going off track, or when
Right,
I need something rescued off a dock.
right.
Don't
Yeah.
don't don't give me sweet words. Move my freight.
It's the word of it is one of our values in the company though. So we try to recognize, I mean, it's hard to recognize when people are being truthful because if that's all you ever are, you can't really call it out a lot.
Right.
But one of our values is veracity, which is the same, being honest, being truthful, being forthright. And so, I mean, we don't have to tell stories to our customers. We don't have to tell stories to our carriers. I
Yep.
our employees, yeah, I'm an open book. They can ask me questions and there's no you get what you get, you know?
I used to say, when I managed a 3PL, every once in a while, someone would say, "This happened or this happened. What should I tell the client?" And I said, "Well, when in doubt, just go ahead and tell the truth."
Yeah. I hired someone once and she worked for a company and she started with us and same thing, had a breakdown. She goes, "What do I tell them?" And she didn't believe. She goes, "Wait, we're gonna just tell them that the truck broke down?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes. And we're gonna create a solution that if they need us to repower it, we're gonna transload,
Well,
we're gonna
I
do
think
something else."
I think we've all seen it though. What I always say is if something goes wrong, I like the idea of saying, "Okay, well, don't call them until you have a solution to that problem." Say, "Hey, your stuff is stuck here, but I made a call. We're going to get somebody to pick that up. If we're going to take care of it. It's going to be a little late. I'll tell you exactly how late in a minute." But as opposed to just going, "Hey, your stuff's not going to be there."
Yep,
That
yep.
is not the candor I want. I want the
No,
candor of, "Here's the problem, and I've already worked on the solution. I'll call you right back with it."
yeah, and I'll try to present my team will try to present 2 things because there's some freight that you can't transload or you can't
Right.
do certain things with, and so it's again, that account familiarity side of things, like knowing your customer and knowing
Oh,
what
I
type of
see, you can say it,
I
account
know finally,
familiarity.
it took me forever to pronounce
On my last podcast with you, we both struggled to say that.
yeah. So it's just
So,
nice to do that, and then you know how to take that course of action depending upon that customer.
that is, to any shippers listening, I always believe that account familiarity is so important. You have to make a commitment to somebody, find somebody you can work with, like Nicole, and say, "I'm going to work with you, and you're gonna know us like the back of your hand." 'Cause, I think that one of the things that gets overlooked with when you say, "Oh, well, we just give it to whoever's lowest price." You never get account familiarity that way. You have to find somebody who is gonna be with you day in, day out,
Yep,
married, not dating,
yep.
and, they'll be there on Friday night at 7 o'clock when you find you had a problem, as opposed to if you're, in that transactional mode, you'll never get it. So let's talk a little bit about why your company succeeded. I know Ryan and I are both curious about lucky versus good, and I know from what we've talked about, you kind of have these really good work habits. You have these, and you're driven. So I think there's some good there. Talk about where you feel like maybe you got lucky.
Ooh. I mean, it could be some of the customers that you come upon, when they're in their time of need and you're trying to build your business and you make that one phone call and they're like, "Well, yes, I have expedites all the time." Um,
Right.
a lot of that, that sales part of things where you're getting things going is lucky. It's that, but I don't
But it's not like you made one phone call and go, "Yeah, you know what? Freight sales is easy. I get lucky and I just I made 4 phone calls, got 4 customers. Hallelujah."
I've never looked at the lucky side of things. I just try to focus on even the small wins, like in our leadership meetings. I go, what's the win of the week for you? I want to know what those things are. So I don't really focus on that. It's just more of what are our efforts, what are our actions that we can have in our control that we can push us to the next level and create that strategy behind it. So that's how I look at it. A good
Well,
question though. You're gonna have me pondering, and I'm probably gonna call you next week and go, I
well,
realized this one moment I was really
what
lucky.
it's interesting because I've heard that on another podcast, Guy Raz's podcast, How I Built This. He always says, "Were you lucky or were you good?" And I always think, it's a difficult question, especially people like yourself who clearly are good and you're driven and you have all these things. I kind of think the lucky is being born where you were, to the parents where you're born to, and that development where you say it wasn't, enormous wealth, it wasn't just enormous talent, it was drive, and that maybe is the lucky part.
Well, and I guess from you saying that, I'm very lucky that I have supportive people,
Right,
that are understanding of the commitments that I've
right.
had and elevating me to keep driving forward because as a mom to twins, and
Twin
a
boys, oh my god.
girl, it could be very, very hard, but I have a great support system that even when they were growing up, my mom, she took care of them, while I was at work. That's very lucky. I wouldn't have been able to push myself through my career without those
Right.
support beams.
I always remember the first time I felt really that it was pure luck because nothing I did to make it happen was when my first daughter was born. I was like, perfectly healthy. Like, wow. That wasn't like, "Good job, Joe, you earned that. You did a good job making" no, that was just luck of the draw. So after ever now I always think, "I'm lucky to have my health. I'm lucky to be born where I was and to the right people," and, uh, I've had to work hard, but the lucky part is I do have my health, and there's a lot of people who are not with health or raised by crazy people. Those those are those are those are things that are hard to recover from, but
Yeah.
anyway, so, to talk about, this imposter syndrome that Ryan is so interested in. Do you ever feel like you ever wake up and go, "Oh my god, I'm a fraud. This is how I built this cool company, this great company, but I this isn't really."
Yeah. I feel
See.
like I feel like being an entrepreneur, you have to be somewhat crazy and a little bipolar. It's one of the loneliest spots, in that you can have, and then it's also the most non-lonely spot that you can have, so you take on the weight of the world, to make sure that I don't look at it as just, "How do I get my paycheck?" I look at, "How do I get my employees to have paychecks who have, husbands, wives, children?" It's like such a pressure sometimes. So I think, of course, I think it's natural to feel like, "What am I doing? I really can't do this," or "How did I get
Right.
here? What am I gonna do next?" And I only know what I know, and then the next day, you're, like, on top of the world. So I think it's normal.
So the imposter part though is feeling like a fraud. You think that's one of a huge range of emotions that you feel as uh, an entrepreneur, as a business
Yeah.
owner.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel a huge range of emotions on everything as being a business owner. It's
Right.
pride. One day you're so proud, and then the next day you have a crazy service failure, and you're like, "Did I not teach these people the right way?" So it's just I think you're flooded by, at least for me, that's how I am. But I do try to take note when I'm in those thoughts of fraud, and I go, what is making me feel this way today?
Right.
I try to realize that that's not really how I feel. It just might be something, an event that's
Right.
transpiring. Yeah.
So one of the things when we were talking about this, doing this podcast, Ryan and I, one of the questions that we wanted to ask is, have you ever been fired? And my my thought was, yeah, everyone we talk to is going to say, I've been fired, and you have not been fired from right.
No. And it's funny, I've even as a teenager when I
Come
left
on.
my little weird job, I I was gonna quit. I got a job to make like $7 an hour, and I, like, walked into my manager's office, and she was gonna let me go, and then she goes, okay, just come back." And then even my first transportation job, we remember those big Nextel, those beep beep two-way phones?
Right. Right.
My owner had made me so angry that I, like, put my phone on my desk, and I was like, "I am done." I walked out, and he came to my window, and he knocked on the door. He's like, "Can we make up? Can you come back? I'll give you a raise. I'm so sorry." So, I don't know. I mean, I've never been fired, but
Well, you're young still, Nicole. Who knows?
well, I hope I don't ever have to work for anyone else to get fired. How's
You
that?
you you might fire yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Never know one day.
You probably promote yourself and, have someone else do your job.
Yep.
No, that's I always think that what Ryan said and what I've said is I've been in roles where I didn't belong,
Mhm,
and I knew I didn't belong, and I was doing it, and you can't have that all the things you've talked about, how excited and passionate you are about these cool things you're doing, you don't feel those because 'cause you're like, "I hardly know what the hell I'm doing." And so getting fired in a lot of times was like a kick in the butt.
mhm.
It got me into a job that made sense. Other times it was just like, "Hey, that was just a stupid thing I was in." But I've been fired, but I have a lot of jobs. I worked in automotive for a long time, and there's tons of projects come and go, and, always a new gig. And, sometimes you like, day 1, you're like, "This is not a good fit. I'll be looking for a new job." But you don't look really until you go, "Yeah, this one's coming to an end."
I did have
Now I
one,
gotta
and
look.
I left, and I just never came back. I worked at a gardening center, and I had to, like, do all the pricing, like, when people would come to scan them out, and I didn't know the names of any of these plants, and I'm like, "How am I gonna do this?" It was so hot outside, so I had my first day, and then I just never went back again. Other than that, I haven't had anything else like that, but yeah, you're
Well, so Nicole, um, give a little shout out here to your company. Who do you serve? And if someone wants to reach out, how do they reach out to you and your team over at Candor?
well, we are always available. We're a 24/7 company, so we can be reached via phone, which will be on our website. Our website is just candorexp.com. You'll see a new version from Sunant coming up
Soon,
here.
soon, yeah.
Very professional look coming. But you can reach us by the website. There's a chat on there, or you can just email operations at candorexp. Our company is definitely hiring, so I do want to say that because I am looking for individuals that can really help elevate us on the truckload side. So we're looking for additional white glove people in Plano, Texas, as well as in Illinois. People that have that consolidated line haul, final mile concept. So we're a growing company and looking to really elevate this team with some additional strong players to it. But
Nice.
as far as pitch goes, I mean, again, that service driven, focused company to make sure that we're really helping our customers
Right.
hit the targets on everything.
Right. And I will say also, Nicole, what I always like about talking to you, well, in the last year or so is your team. Your team seems to be really into being at Candor. You seem like you've got a fun group
I
that
do.
wants to be there, and that matters.
I do. And maybe that's another part of my lucky, is I do
That was part of being good.
yeah, I mean, the lucky, part of that is I do have some really dedicated people that, the phone's ringing at 8 o'clock and they're already done with their shift and it was their shipment and there's a question and they're picking up that phone and they care. They really, really care. And you can't be any more fortunate as a business owner with every single person on your team caring.
Well, you
Makes
built the right
a huge
culture, and
difference.
that's not easy.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, keep up the good work, and thank you so much for coming on my podcast and sharing what you know about, well, sharing your story and the Candor Expedite story. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. And thank all of you for listening to the podcast. Your continued support is very much appreciated. I should also say, um, this I'm going to put on YouTube also because now this is Squadcast now records in video, and so hopefully I'll be able to chop up some video and put that up there. So, or somebody will, certainly not me. All right, Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk soon.